Should I speak? Oh. Hello, good morning.
Okay. Check, 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 check. Perfect.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Second day of UIKonf 2017. Let's try it again. Second day of UIKonf 2017. Okay, thank you very much. I will do my short game of three things. 2 questions, 1 announcement, and then we'll continue with the conference, actually. So, second question, who of you consider yourself a cool kid? Who has Instagram account? Here you go. We have much more cool kids here. So we have a hashtag UIKonf where we kind of collecting all the cool photos that you can make during the conference. So you can collect this stuff and hash it and so on and so forth. Okay, thank you guys, and give it up for Jeff.
Good morning. So I hope everyone had a great night last night. As my daughter will tell you, I'm definitely not one of the cool kids, but I will be posting my photos from yesterday soonish. I took quite a lot of them, so it's going to take me a while to get through them. Our very first speaker today is like a lot of us. She has a favorite color. But unlike many of us, she goes beyond having just the favorite color to having exactly a favorite color. And she asked me to let you know exactly which favorite color. Her favorite color of purple is this color of purple. And she would like you to use this color of purple for testing, for prototypes, for sample apps, and send her screenshots. I believe her Twitter handle is purpleyay. So please do that. I'd like to invite Gwen to the stage to talk to us about implementing compassion, which I'm sure we can all use in our daily lives. Gwen. Thanks.
Thank you. Did everyone get that? Did everyone copy that down and write it? Because if not, I can repeat it from memory. Hands? Anyone? Does anyone else? Oh, okay. Okay, I got it from TJ. Again, it is hashtag A157E8. I look forward to your screenshots. So, good morning. At one point in my career, I would come home from work every night, sit on the carpet of my hallway, and I would cry. I wouldn't even make it to the couch of my living room. I just plopped down on that carpet hallway, opened up my laptop, and cried as I continued to work until fatigue and despair finally took over me and put me to sleep. I was crying because I was convinced that something was going to go wrong with the project that I was working on. That it would have turned out that I had accidentally corrupted production data without even realizing it in some irredeemable way, or that I would come across an error message that I just wouldn't be able to fix in time, and then suddenly the project stalls and it's all my fault, and that the only way that I could protect against all these potentialities was to keep working longer and harder until I could finally finish this project and just breathe again. And you might be thinking, okay, it sounds like I need sleep, which was true. I definitely needed sleep. Or that, I should talk to my manager about this and see if I can get some support. Or maybe that at my stage of my career, that this is like a normal thing to feel this kind of fear, and as you get more experienced, it goes away. Or that this is some classic imposter syndrome, and I just needed some confidence to power through. But I can tell you that none of that was it. So how did I get there? How did I get into such a place of despair and being overwhelmed? Backing up a few months, my career trajectory looks pretty damn good. So I graduated from university at 19 years old with a degree in maths. I immediately got a job as an iOS developer where I worked on really chewy, hard technical problems like implementing an encryption algorithm. I'm not even kidding. I was reading math research papers and emailing people from NYU and Oxford trying to get answers until finally I was able to implement that math in C, no less. I still feel pretty damn good about that one. And I got positive reviews from my coworkers and all my performance reviews. By all accounts, it looked like I was doing pretty good. But this wasn't enough for me. So one thing to note about me is I am an ambitious, unabashed type A, right? I go after the things that seem a little bit too bold or daring to want. Because when I see those things, I'm like, challenge accepted. I'm going to show you that I can do these things. And not just that, but I was at this point of my career where my career felt like it was plateauing a bit. Like people would give me a feature, I would implement it. They'd give me another feature, I would implement it. And I'm like, what is the point? Like, what does this add up to? So I set my sights on something a little bit higher. I wanted a promotion, and not just any promotion. I wanted to be a tech lead. Admitting this right now feels like a little embarrassing because I didn't want it for, the noble work of managing people and their careers. I wanted it because I wanted the acknowledgement and the recognition and respect that one gets from such a title. I was even so bold that when the position even opened up, I just went up and asked for it. And I didn't get it. Understandably, because I hadn't really done any grand scale technical project. I hadn't managed people before, so they told me I didn't have enough experience. Makes sense. So I was determined that I was going to prove my technical expertise. I took on the hardest project that I could find at work, this grand networking refactor where I would reach into the data models and the networking stack and the database, and I was going to clean all of that up. I started speaking at conferences, and then I started getting invited to conferences to the point where I had garnered this reputation of being someone who could take this hard technical thing and break it down into digestible, interesting pieces. I even read computer science textbooks in my free time, like that Big 4 design pattern book. I was like, I'm going to learn all of the architecture and be a grand master in this. And I read the structure and interpretation of computer programs, like that MIT textbook. Though, admittedly, I only got so far because the copy that someone lent me was this gorgeous shade of purple. I like purple, in case you haven't figured that out yet. But this still wasn't enough. Like that chewy technical project, that networking refactor. I worked on it for 6 months and got it to the point where it was almost working. Everything was hooked up. All I had was a few race conditions that I needed a second pair of eyes on to help me just get my head away from the weeds of it all. But then they canceled it without warning, and I was like, ow, oh, that's not cool. And then the small opportunities to get experience leading people on small project lead roles, I saw them being given to the new grads of the company. And not even that, to the intern. And I was like, ow, that really stings. And so I was thinking, maybe I hadn't managed my visibility well. Maybe it wasn't that I didn't have technical expertise. At that point, I was feeling pretty confident in myself that I knew what I was doing, but maybe people forgot about me. Maybe I just didn't pattern match with what they saw as leadership material, because admittedly, I am peppy and bubbly and girlish, but maybe people look at leaders and they think, very domineering and speaks up in meetings very often about things of a very deep technical nature, such as very strong opinions on which iOS testing framework to use and has a lot of presentations. And I'm just I'm none of those things. And then I finally got my answer. It happened in this one watershed moment of a day where I was walking back from the kitchen, mason jar of water in my hand, when a manager, he pulls me aside and says, "Do you have a minute?" And he takes me to a conference room, and not one of the private conference rooms, but a conference room that has 2 glass walls so that anyone who passes by and wants to see into it can definitely do so. And he sits me down and says, "So I hear you have a problem with so-and-so." And I'm confused because I'm like, I've never really worked with so-and-so in any particular length. But then I'm like, I had made a comment to my manager a week ago, and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with so-and-so. It's, well, he's an intern, and I saw that he just got a project lead position, and so I wanted to know where I didn't have experience, where am I lacking? And as he responds, I can tell he's dancing around something. There's something that he's not saying outright, but he takes a while to get there. He says that this intern is laser focused, and he brings up the project that I had worked on for 6 months, and it got canceled, and was like, "It seems like you haven't shipped anything in a while." And then he says that I ask too many questions. Someone who's vying for a leadership role shouldn't be asking questions, they should be asked questions. But I'm still not getting it. I'm like, okay, and yes, what is it? And so finally, in this impromptu meeting in a fishbowl of a conference room, he gets to his point. He looks at me and he says, "Well, you're good, but you're not great." He implies that I have a higher opinion of myself than maybe is accurate. And I can understand that he thinks he's trying to help me, right? Maybe some people do have a really high perception of themselves, and you have to hit them with the hard truth. This is tough love. But that's not what it feels like to me. Instead, I just feel this gut punch of devastation as I process those words. I feel my mind disassociating with the rest of my body, and my face just becomes this blank mask of emotion. I perform the rest of the conversation in just monosyllabic answers because I cannot even manage anything else than that. Because it turns out that all along, the little voice in my head that had been, something's wrong, maybe something is wrong with you, but something is wrong. It turns out that little voice had been right. In hindsight, I should have quit. I knew I was doing good work. I knew that I had value, but if the person who has influence over my career and my opportunities couldn't see that, couldn't recognize all the effort and all the extra time I was putting in, I shouldn't be there anymore. But I stayed. I enjoyed working with my coworkers. They had become friends, and I believed in the company and the product. Plus, again, like I said, I am ridiculously type A to a fault. So I was thinking instead, I am going to prove him wrong. But the problem was after he had said that to me, I stopped trusting myself because my opinion of myself was so dissonant with his opinion of me. And his opinion of me happened to have more effect on where my career went at that company. And so from that moment on, I started second-guessing everything I did. He said I asked too many questions, so maybe I should stop asking questions, right? Maybe if I ask a question, that reveals a knowledge gap, and that further validates good but not great. Maybe I should stop asking for help. If I ask for help or try to pair with someone, maybe that shows I can't make my own judgment calls, and that, again, is good but not great. After a while, it felt like protecting myself meant just not working with other people, not putting myself in a position where I was vulnerable, where they could see the things I knew and the things I didn't and judge me for it. And this still wasn't enough. This person's opinion of me did not change. I mean, obviously, because at that point, my work had suffered. I was going so much slower and probably not as great quality of work. And at that point, coding just felt lonely and isolating and so unenjoyable. And so there I was on the carpet of my hallway, working long hours, crying because I just hated coding so much at that point, but continuing to work because it felt like it was the only way I could redeem myself to maybe eventually get through this rut and get some acknowledgement that I was doing something, anything right at all. So, why did I share this story? Why did I start your Tuesday mornings with like such a bummer of an experience, right? Well, before I answer this question, I want to ask you 3 questions. Have any of you ever frozen up while tackling a new problem or code base? Raise your hands. Have any of you ever procrastinated on a task? Oh, okay, there we go. Everyone there. Or have you ever dreaded asking for help or asking to pair with someone? My point is that you're not alone. Everyone here has felt some degree of fear, whether it's a small scale fear or like my scale of like overthinking everything. These fears are normal, and they're not just normal, they're okay to have. You don't need to shut off your emotions. You don't need to disparage yourself for having them. But at the time, I didn't know that. I didn't know how to process these fears, so instead, I kind of judged myself for my weakness and succumbing to them. Like, why can't I just power through my fears? I am a confident person. Fake it till you make it, right? I didn't know how to show compassion for myself and where I was at. Because if you think about the phrase, show yourself compassion, what does it actually mean to you? What comes to mind? It's like someone hands you this empty protocol that says compassion with a function on it. Show compassion. And they're like, okay, if you implement this protocol, you'll be great. You'll be fine. And you like implement it, and you're like, yeah, but like what actually goes in it? Like, what are the action steps? How do I know if I'm like doing it right? Like, what is it? And what's harder is that you can't just take someone else's implementation of it. Everyone has a different brain and context and history and environment and social identity, so that if you try to copy and paste someone else's implementation, it probably isn't gonna work for you. So even though I knew that I could not stay in that place, I refused to stay on the carpet of my hallway. I didn't know what the answer looked like. I didn't know how to find my way out of it. But I knew what the problem looked like. I knew that one of the main sources of my fears was this fear of looking incompetent, of asking for help, of seeking guidance, of wanting to pair with someone, right? I had gotten this feedback that I asked too many questions and I relied on people. So I was like, okay, then I'm gonna come up with like a whole thought process that is to like determining whether my questions were valid. It became like a whole calculus where I would think, okay, so I've searched these Google terms, which gave me these Stack Overflow results, which look pretty good, but trying to figure out what they told me, they gave me these error messages, which I'm not even gonna try to read this, but like, given the conceptual model in my head, it doesn't really match what these error results seem to say, so that means there must be a different conceptual model, but that means my conceptual model and the actual conceptual model isn't the same, so okay, I think I've reached all the avenues that I could do on my own, so maybe I should ask someone for help. But who do I ask for help? Who haven't I just like exhausted my quota of question asking with? Maybe that person, because he knows what code I'm working on. But last time I asked him a question, he sent me like this Wikipedia link, which was A, not useful, B, didn't answer my question, and C, pretty passive aggressive, so not him, so maybe another person. But this other person that I asked a question to, I don't think like she works in the part of the code base that I'm working on, so not only would I have to take her out of her context, but then she would have to like catch up on where I'm at, then that'll take a lot of time, so but she's nice, so maybe that'll be okay. But actually, am I really at my wit's end? Maybe I should spend like 1 or 2 more hours just like flailing until like my nerves are super afraid. And when they look at me and they see my eyes and I'm asking their questions, they can see the desperation. Maybe they'll take pity and be patient, right? I typed all this up so the captioner wouldn't have to. You're welcome. Did they try? Did they even try? Oh, they did. Props to them, okay. What? My point being that this is an exhausting place to be in, right? If you go through this every time you're about to ask for help or put yourself out there, you just tire yourself out. This is the way you get to burnout. And it wasn't until I came across this article called Musings on the Nature of Feminine Perfectionism by Hollywood that I was able to dig into my fear a little more. There's this quote I'm going to read. It's a bit long, so bear with me. The fact that you showed up with armor on at all tells me you're afraid, that you've been conditioned to see every encounter as an opportunity for judgment and assessment, rather than an opportunity for conversation, a potential chance for growth, a fleeting moment of mutual recognition. So breaking this down, she first says, you've been conditioned to see every encounter as an opportunity for judgment as an assessment. And as soon as I read these words, I was like, oh, that is so spot on. That is me, right? Working with other people had become a chance to fail their judgment because they would see where I was lacking and look down on me for it. So maybe it was better to not work with them at all. But what I love about this quote is if you keep reading, she provides an alternative way to look at this, right? She says, rather than judgment, this should be conversation. This should be a chance for growth. This should be a moment of mutual recognition. And so that was my first insight. That was my answer, that moments of vulnerability shouldn't be these moments of reckoning. They should be moments of growth. Because you ask for help, your teammate is able to help you. They're able to pair with you and show you a different way of looking at the problem, or teach you something new about debugging that you hadn't known before, or maybe just tell you some new Google terms that you could search. And so now, when I was feeling a fear of looking incompetent, I had a script in my brain that I could use. I could think, well, even though I'm feeling this fear, how might it be true that this moment is also a moment of growth? How might it be true that this moment is a moment that helps me? And what was great about this script was that I wasn't trying to turn my fear off. I wasn't trying to just power through it. Instead, I was including my fear as a part of my growth. It became a constructive moment, a positive one. The second of the fears that I recognized in myself was the fear of not just looking incompetent, but being incompetent. I was afraid that there would be a problem that would be outside of my definitive limits, such that no matter how hard I worked, I wouldn't be able to get there. I felt this fear show up in that project that didn't ship after 6 months of working on it by myself. I felt this fear in the features that just didn't end, the ones where you just chop one bug down and then 3 more appear in place, and you're like, why? Why? I felt this in the career that didn't progress no matter how much I worked on it, that just didn't seem to add up and just plateaued. So I got in this mindset of, well, maybe no matter how hard I work at this particular thing, I'm just not going to succeed. But I hate this kind of thinking. I would hate for this to be true. I've received this on the opposite end, where people come up to me and they've learned of my math degree, and they're like, oh my God, that's so impressive. I wish I could be like someone who does math. I wish I was that kind of person. And in my head, I'm like, no, you are the kind of person that can do math. Everyone can do math. It's fun, sometimes. And so I had this cognitive dissonance between the belief of, yes, I can, and the results that seem to say, but you haven't. It wasn't until I gave a talk on type erasure that I was able to bridge this gap. So the only reason I chose type erasure as a talk topic was because I was brainstorming some ideas with a friend. I am terrible at coming up with talk ideas. And she gave me this whole list, and I saw these 2 words, and I was like, I don't know what those 2 words mean. I bet other people won't either. Hey, that will be valuable. Hey! And it wasn't until it was like way too late to change my talk topic that I realized I have no idea what type erasure is. Oh my God. There were like, at the time, maybe 3 explanatory articles on the internet, and I'd be reading them being like, what? What is this code sample? Why are you doing all these things? What is this weird wrapper thing? What is the motivation? Why are we even doing this? Or not even that, they'd use like all these terms like, this is an algebraic data type, but is that the same as like as an abstract data type? And what about these concrete types? Like, what are these terms? And so suddenly I had to read about type theory. Not just that, I also had to learn about the constraints of it and like how it didn't have covariance and contravariance. And I'm like, now I'm reading about language design. I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this talk? I just could not understand it. But it was also way too late for me to change. I couldn't go back. I was stuck with it. And so I had to keep going and going. And this whole time, I was in this like mindset, this fixed belief that, oh my God, I'm just not very good at these low-level details. I'm the type of person that likes to see things like sparkle and bounce on the screen. That's my jam. But like the low-level details of the operating system and how the compiler works, I'm like, I don't really care. Like these details just never stuck with me. But since I had to keep going, I just kept working on it day after day until I got to this moment where I did start to understand it. Like, I did start to understand what a type was. Oh, that was the best. I was like, I have a definition of what a type is. And then I started to understand the code samples. I was able to, like, read them and be like, oh, I know when you want to use type erasure. And suddenly I understood things like abstract typing, concrete typing, covariance. And suddenly it's like, I know type erasure. And it turned out that all along, my constraint hadn't been my aptitude. It wasn't that like I just wasn't the type of person that couldn't understand low-level details. All along, my constraint had been time. That I had never given myself the time to just like sit on these kind of problems and just chew and chew and chew. And then finally, I'm like swallowing. I'm like, oh, there it is. That's it. And this phenomenon of moving from like a static perception of your capabilities to one that's more flexible and plastic is what psychologists call the difference between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. So, for example, if you come across a problem that's like maybe a little bit hard or maybe a little intractable, someone with a fixed mindset might think, this is too hard for me. I'm not that kind of person to do this. Whereas someone with a growth mindset might think, this is hard, but I just haven't figured this out yet. So here I had my second answer. I had another script in my head where every time I was feeling this fear of being incompetent, I could think, well, actually my constraint is time, not aptitude. And maybe because of that, I could be okay with not doing everything perfectly. Sometimes you just don't have the time to like refactor the entire architecture to make it the perfect thing that would be amazing for your feature. Or sometimes you just don't have the time to learn everything about operating systems that you don't know, and so it's okay to rely on your teammates to make up for it. That's what they're there for. And so I had built up these beautiful scripts in my head of like how to deal with these fears. And as I learned all these new perceptions and terminologies, I also started to realize the limits of them, the caveats to thinking like this, which was there's only so much I can do to change people's perception of me. So even if I am feeling afraid of looking incompetent, but I'm still like willing to put myself out there and like be vulnerable, it doesn't mean that the people around me will make it emotionally safe to do so. They still might penalize me for things that don't deserve to be penalized for. And the same thing with the fear of being incompetent. Even if I can view myself with a mindset and be like, yes, I can, it doesn't mean the people around me won't view me with a fixed one and that they won't limit my opportunities and how they sponsor me based on that. So I learned that I had to be aware of my environment such that I shouldn't disparage myself for what I can't change. I can change the way I react to things. I can change the way that I handle my fear, but I can't change the way that people perceive me. And the final caveat is that the fear doesn't go away. Even now, right now, as I'm working, if someone gives me a code review and says, this looks like it's a really great approach, maybe just fix these 2 things, I have to excuse myself to a conference room and just take some deep breaths, being like, I'm okay, I'm doing fine. He said I'm doing fine. He's not going to suddenly turn around and be like, you're terrible, right? I'm fine. And I sometimes wonder, but wouldn't it be great if I could just not feel this fear, if I didn't have all these emotions that I was just constantly being fraught with? But I don't think you should try to rationalize your way emotions. I think that these fears are all valid. If someone looks at me and thinks that I'm incompetent, or if I limit myself by thinking that I am incompetent, maybe I don't get a promotion. Or maybe I don't get acknowledgement for the work I do, or maybe I don't even get a job. Maybe I just fail all the interviews. And so instead of trying to rationalize away your emotions, the final thing that I had to learn in my journey of compassion was to appreciate my emotions and appreciate all the things my fear tells me. Because emotions are data points. If you think about it, your brain is this squishy black box of inputs and outputs of experiences and decisions, and your emotions are all just clues of what's going on. If you feel angry about this thing, well, that's an edge right there. And if you feel sad about this thing, hey, that's something else that you need to work around. Right? By taking your emotions as data points, you get to learn more about yourself. And by learning more about yourself, maybe you can leverage that to help you become the person you want to be. So what does my fear tell me? What should I listen to? I appreciate that my fear tells me when there's a gap between where I am and where I want to be. I appreciate my fear telling me that I am in a situation that I feel really unprepared for and uncertain about, and that there's something to learn here, something that I can keep in mind for the future. I appreciate my fear telling me that right now, this is terrifying, this right here, because I have just thrown a lot of vulnerability at all your faces. And hopefully, it's a moment of mutual recognition and conversation. And I appreciate all of you. I appreciate all the things that you have been resilient through, all the things that your fear has told you and what you've learned from it. And I appreciate all the space you've given me for my story and my emotions. And for that, I thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gwen, for sharing. I think if all of us understood ourselves as well as you do, this industry would be so much better.
Well, maybe this is a start.
So before we continue, we have a bunch of people sitting in the back, and I would love to see them sitting in chairs, assuming they'd like to. So if you have a chair that is empty next to you, would you raise your hand? Oh my gosh, that's even worse than I thought. So keep your hands up, keep your hands up. If you're sitting in the back and would like a chair, come find a chair. You'll meet a new friend. You should be nice to them. Ooh. All right, it looks like the migration is completed, so you can put your hands down. So our next speaker is Francisco, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about moving fast and keeping your code quality high, which is a fantastic topic because I move slow and I have low code quality. But one thing you might not notice about Francisco when you see him up here on stage talking about code is when he was younger, before he really spent so much time in front of a keyboard, he spent far much more time in front of a microphone as a rapper. So after he's done talking to you, perhaps at coffee, you can buttonhole him and find out more about that. I understand he actually recorded a record you might want to ask him how well it did. So Francisco, please join us.
Thanks. Thank you.
Good to see you.
OK. So it went awful, by the way. So this talk is basically a bit about moving fast and also about keeping your code quality. But I'm going to start with a spoiler, because I know that everybody loves spoilers. This talk is not about faster development, so I'm not going to teach you any new ideas or any new tools on what to use. This is not going to be like a speed reading course on how to develop. It is basically going to be a talk about quality. And the premise of this talk is that productivity is a byproduct of quality. And I'll explore this further in more detail, but first I want to give a small warning. Unfortunately, this talk, probably people that work by themselves are not going to get much value from this talk. I hope some stuff is useful, but in general, it's not going to be really useful for people that work by themselves. This talk is also basically my experience as a developer. This is what has worked with my background. These are not rules by any means. These are just experiences, what I've experienced and what I think works. So who am I? So as they already explained, I'm Francisco. That's my website. If you want to see the slides of the talk, they're already there. And that's my Twitter handle. So if you want to just connect and talk afterwards, just please do. I'm from Chile, from Santiago. I don't know if anybody here has been there. But they told me yesterday that I was the first South American speaker at UIKonf, so I'm very proud about that. And I work at a company that's called AxiomSend. In AxiomSend, which is a Canadian company that is based in Vancouver, but we actually also have an office in Santiago. We're currently around 60 people working in the company, and the iOS team fluctuates around 5 to 10 iOS developers. We have more interns in the summer, and they leave and stuff like that. So we usually have around 5 and 10. And what we specialize at is that we do a lot of small experiments internally. So we have ideas that come from inside of the company, and we just create all of these different prototypes to test those ideas and see if they work. If they work, we put more resources into that. If they don't, we just kill them immediately. So we like to call ourselves a startup that builds startups, and we've had some success, and obviously most of them just get killed immediately after a month. So when you do all of these different types of apps, you need to try to move as fast as possible and get as much value as possible in the shortest amount of time. So I said that this talk is going to be about quality, and I said that productivity is a byproduct of quality. So what do I mean by that? So let's say you have a manager, let's call him Mark. And the story goes like this. So this guy, Mark, goes there on Monday morning, and he asks you hey, I need to build all of these features for Friday. And you know that those features are not possible to make for Friday. Maybe you did an estimation last week, and he didn't just disregard the whole estimation. Or maybe you even didn't do an estimation, and this is just coming directly from a business reality. So one option would be to work faster. That means, for example, don't wait for the CI to finish, or don't even do pull requests, because then you have to wait for somebody else to review your code, and that takes time. Don't even think about the design that you're going to implement before you implement it, but this obviously reduces the quality of the product. Another option would be just work longer. So instead of working 40 hours, just stay until 8 p.m. every day, work 60-hour week or something. And this is obviously going to affect the quality of your life, which, if you keep doing it on a daily basis or a week basis, is going to turn into burnout, which, as we all know, also reduces the quality of the work that you're producing. And the third option would be buying a DeLorean, going back in time, and having more time to implement it. And one funny thing is that I've never heard a developer say something like this. We are really not proud about the amount of lines of code that we implement. We're really proud about the quality of the code that we implement. So that's why you can say something like, oh, this code is beautiful, or this code is elegant, right? Because you're proud of the quality, not the quantity. It doesn't matter if you wrote 10,000 lines of code for something. But if you wrote a really simple, beautiful snippet, you're probably going to share it. And less quality in your products creates more production bugs. Because as we said, if you don't take any time to design, then you're probably going to create more bugs that are going to be caught in production time and not when you're designing it or implementing it. And more bugs in production, obviously, amounts to less productivity. So there's actually a really interesting study by IBM where you can see that if you catch a bug in design time, it takes actually 100 times less effort to fix it than if you catch it when it's in production. So that's 100 times less time to implement some other things. And as we all know, if you don't design your code, if you don't think about it before you start implementing it, you're probably going to get spaghetti code. And that means that it's going to take more time in the future to add more code on top of that. And obviously, more time implementing each feature amounts to less productivity as well. So quality means having fewer bugs. Quality means having faster development cycles for each feature that you're implementing. But who's in charge of quality? So I would say that quality is not the responsibility of a single department. It's the responsibility of the whole company. So if we're going to talk about quality, we need to talk about the quality of the company as well. So let's start with that. So as I said, and I'm not sure if I did it, but I started working as a professional developer in 2010. And when I started, I was very young. I was in my early 20s. So I had like a couple of things that I really wanted the company to have. So this was my must-haves for the company. I wanted a ping pong table, because the ping pong tables are pretty cool. I wanted a football table, because football tables are pretty cool. And I didn't want to work in a suit because we're like in software development, like there are no that single suit around here. Suits are not cool in our environment. And one I wanted to have, but it was okay if they didn't have it, was beer on tap. But that was my stretch goal, so it wasn't that bad. So eventually, with all of these requirements, I obviously joined the startup world, because that's the only workplace where this is allowed. And right now, I've been in the industry a bit longer. So I've been here like for 6, 7 years. And I've discovered that some companies give you that, and some other companies give you more perks. So some companies go to your house and clean your house a couple of times a week. Some other companies do your laundry and go and pick your laundry from your place. That's pretty ridiculous. I mean, like, I'm 30. I don't need for a company to go and pick my laundry. I can do it by myself, hopefully. And I read this quote the other day, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Great work environment don't need perks as bribes. Because if you are a great work environment, you're going to attract talent anyways. You don't need to like get their laundry done or stuff like that. What this amounts for, and this actually doesn't have any impact on the quality of the product that you're building at all. It just makes people stay longer at work, which means that you're going to spend more hours at work and less hours in your daily life, in your life, personal life. And a bad way to measure productivity is how many hours you work in something. A good way to measure productivity, I would say, is how much of something you did in an hour. So right now I'm 30. So what kind of things do I value in a company? So I value a company that promotes personal growth. I value a company that has space for me to learn. I value a company that has good work-life balance. And I'm a developer. I've been a developer for 7 years. I don't want to move into some other direction right now. So I want a company that doesn't have only one career path, that is becoming a manager. So how do I know what company should I go into and what company I shouldn't go into? So one way of approaching this issue is try to see where the company is putting their money. So is the company putting their money in all of these crazy perks, or is the company putting the money in something else? So for example, in ActionSend, we pay for people to go to conferences. So actually here, there's a coworker, I don't know where he is. They're here. So he's here because like the company paid for his ticket and for his plane and everything. And as you can see, the company also encourages people to speak at conferences, which is something that is really worthwhile. And also we try to give access to people for like books, courses, or any learning material that they might need. Also, a really good important thing is that as a developer, you need to be learning constantly. And if your company doesn't give you time to learn during the work hours, that means that you have to do it after work, which is fine. which if you're learning something completely unrelated with work, that's fine. But sometimes, and that's really common, you need to learn something, some new technology. Or like, for example, like we started working in a React Native app a couple of months ago. And I didn't know anything about React Native or anything like that. So I took some time to learn about React Native during the work hours, and with like a course that I got from the company. So I want to work for a company that not only recognizes that we have to study constantly, but gives you time to do that. And all of these things actually have a direct impact on the quality of your life and the quality of the work that you're going to produce. So I will say to work in a company that values quality, that not only values the quality of the product that they're building, but that also values the quality of the people that are in the organization. Because that's going to have an direct impact in the quality of the project that you're working on. So let's talk a bit about projects. So who here works in a flat hierarchy? Can I have like a couple of thanks. I think flat hierarchy is a lie. I think it's not natural. So in general, when you think about flat hierarchy, like the idea is like everybody is the same, right? So you don't have managers, you don't have like people that is on top of each other, you don't have anything like that. But when you have a group of people, in general, leadership comes naturally. So you have people that are leaders because they have like more experience, or you have people that are leaders because they have more knowledge in some areas. So what happens in reality, in my experience at least, is when you have like a flat hierarchy completely, is that some people are actually the same as others, and some others are actually not quite the same. So this guy actually knows a bit more the CEO. So if he approaches the CEO, he probably has more influence to the CEO. And this other guy actually has more time in the company. So when he said something, like his voice is heard more than somebody else. And this, you realize about all of these little things, the more time you spend in the company. But nobody really knows who to ask something, or who else to ask for something else when they get into the company for the first time. So this is actually informal leadership. You still have the same amount of leadership that you had before, but this is completely informal. So nobody actually knows where to ask until you spend enough time in that environment to actually know all of these subtleties between the people inside. So what did we do with this? Because we actually had this problem. So we just made it explicit. So instead of like not having a leader or not having like managers or anything like that, we changed it and we made roles explicit. But what does a manager look like? Because we obviously don't want to work with a completely vertical company that we know that doesn't work. So for us, a manager is less of a decision-making role. It's more about a safety role or a coordinator role. Like he facilitates communication between the team members, but he doesn't make any of the decisions. The decisions are still taken together by the whole team or the whole project people. And we just decided to not call them managers, so we call them keepers, just to like make that change a bit more obvious. So we implemented a bit more structure, but we still have distributed responsibilities. So everybody that is involved in a project, it's still their responsibility to create quality in the project. You cannot say like, no, he asked me that. I knew that it was completely stupid to implement it, but I did it anyways because they asked me that. You come up with like the requirements all together, and you try to design everything all together. So I've been talking about quality for a while, but I haven't defined quality. So what is quality? So there's a really good definition that I like from Peopleware that starts with a good definition of requirements. So if you had a good definition of requirements, then you can say, if those requirements are met, then you have good quality in your project. But it all starts with a good definition of requirements. And what we've been doing lately is trying to build a product in really short iterations. So instead of like going for like 4 weeks or like 3 weeks, we try to do it in like 2 or 1 week. That way, it makes it way more transparent what you're doing, and you can actually check the quality of your code or the quality of the project that you're working on after each iteration. So you can like actually immediately after the end of one iteration know if you're making a mistake in the process or in something, and you can iterate again and change the process to implement something better. So on every iteration that we do, we strive for quality. And every time that you do something for like a big amount of time, like over and over again, you're going to get used to it. So like our pull request right now doesn't take like a week to review, because like people are used to just like really small pull requests. Because when you have like really a short amount of time to implement something, you have to do it in like really, really small steps. One of the things that we also had a lot of problems with was context switching. So we work in a company, as I said, that has different headquarters, has different offices around the world. And one of the offices in Vancouver, another office is in Chile. So we cannot spend a lot of time trying to tap somebody in the shoulder because like there's somebody probably that he's not going to be online at that moment. So instead of trying to focus on like having all the people at the same time in the same moment, we tried something else. So actually, when you're interrupted, and this is a study that I saw that's very interesting, it takes like around 23 minutes to go back into the task that you're working on. So that's 23 minutes just for a tap in the shoulder to like change the Spotify audio or something. It's a lot of time just to like disrupt somebody that's actually working focus on something. So what we're doing right now in the company is, even though we have offices and I work really closely with people in the same office, we still work like we're working remotely. And that's because we know that we have like a time difference with Vancouver in this case, that is 5 hours from Chile or something like that. But we also have time difference in our office, because we don't have we don't have like any required time to get to the office. So there's some people that are more morning persons, and some other people just like to work later. So some people get to the office at like 8:30 or 9, and some other people get there at 11 or something like that. So we already have 2 hours difference. So we cannot depend on being at the office at the same time. So instead of tapping somebody in the shoulder, we just use Slack, and we send them a message. And whenever they're available, then we can have a Hangouts call, or we can just like grab them and go to the conference room. So we rely a lot on async tools. That way you can be everywhere, you can work from everywhere. We have offices, but we also have remote people. And people that work remotely doesn't have any problem working with us, because like the whole company works as if they're working remotely. So we don't rely on other people being present at the moment. And we work with our teams as if they're not online, even when they are online. So for this, we use different tools. We use, for example, GitHub. Probably most of you guys already use it. We use tools like Slack, as I already said. We use another tool that's called SendHub that we built for ourselves on top of GitHub for project management. So we work with our teams completely asynchronously, and we try not to rely on email much. So let's talk a bit about teams. So I will say that teams are actually more important than projects, because we work with people, and that's something that we sometimes forget. But getting a group of people to get along is actually quite hard. It's not really easy. So if you think that you're going to like put really, really talented people, really skillful people together, and they're just going to work perfectly because each of them work perfectly in their separate areas, that's not true. And when you get a good amount of people, like a good team of people, to work together and to communicate well, then that's really, really important. And that's actually a hard thing to get. It's a hard thing to form a good group of talented people to work together. So we form projects around teams. We don't form teams around projects. What that means is that if we have like a new project, as I said, we have like a bunch of projects going on all over the time. But the projects, when we create a new project, we have like one team of like 5 or 10 people that actually gets to that project, but they already work together in another project. Instead of like having a project and seeing what we need in that project in particular, and like getting people from all over the place and getting them together, we do it the other way around. We start with the team, and then we assign the project. So how do we create good teams at ActionSend? So first, I just said it, we keep them teams fairly small, because communicating with people when you have like a 5 to 10 people team is way easier than you have 20 people team, where you have like a lot more difficulty communicating with them. And we focus a lot on sharing knowledge across the teams. So we have teams that are focused on the project, and they're moving like from project to project. And we also have teams that are discipline related. So for example, like an iOS team or like a front-end team. So for each of these teams, we actually have study groups. A study group is 1 hour each week that we take to study a particular subject. So we discuss like anything related to iOS, for example, and then like an hour after that, the front-end team gets together and discuss anything related to front-end. And here we agree to standards that we're going to work on. We share what we worked the previous week. So we discuss like mostly everything. We also read books and stuff. But one of the good things about the study group that I've seen is that in here we set up on standards, as I just said. So for standards, for example, for pull requests and code reviews, at the start, a couple of years ago, we were doing a lot of code reviews that were like, this syntax is wrong. So there's like a trailing column that's missing or something like that. And that's actually not a good code review because there are tools for that. So we can use like something like SwiftLint to use that instead of doing it manually. And we set a bunch of rules through like danger systems. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's also a really good tool. Instead of like doing all of these things that shouldn't be done in code reviews, we do it like with tools, and we focus on what's not automated. So we focus on like the really important things. And by the way, this is not a good code review. This is a really bad code review because this is not saying anything, and I've seen a lot of people do this, and this is just completely worthless. So you're not helping anybody with this. Something like this is a bit better. I don't think this is like the best example in the world, but at least like here, like the way of saying something is different, and also you're providing an example on how to implement it better. So this is like a better way to approach code reviews and pull requests. We also have a template project repository. In this repository, everybody shares if they come up with like a new pattern or something like that. And to do that, we just like do a pull request. You create a README for each of the patterns that you implemented, and you explain why that pattern is good. What do you think that it's important in that pattern? And this is shared like, across all of the iOS team. And every time that you do a pull request with a new pattern or like improving a new pattern, you actually tag the whole team, and you wait for the whole team to actually read it so they can actually understand what's going on, and they can actually use it in the future. We also have a shared architecture. I would love to talk about architecture if anybody's interested, but this is pretty long, and this probably is worth a talk by itself, which actually there is a talk about that we have. That is from Steve, that's our lead iOS developer. And as I said, like the slides are online already, so you can just like go there and read about that. But having the same architecture across all of our projects make it really easy to move from one project to another because you already know where all the things should be. And also, as I said, we have an iOS template repo. And we take advantage of the repo also by using Xcode templates. So each time that you implement a new template in the iOS template repo, you actually also can implement the same with an Xcode template. So it will be actually really easy to just use that pattern inside your code. And also, there's a lot to say about Xcode templates. And there's another talk by Camo that is around here. So if you're interested on how to do Xcode templates or how to start doing Xcode templates, or even like how to implement them, you can approach us later on, and Camo will probably help you with that. I have no idea how to do that. He's the expert, so approach him. This talk is in Spanish, unfortunately, but like as I said, Camo is here, so you're welcome to either learn Spanish or talk to Camo. And yeah, finally, the developer. So before coming here, I actually got my wisdom teeth removed, like these two, like 3 weeks before coming here, which was not a good idea. But I got them removed, and my idea was actually, for some reason, I wanted to remove them, the 4 of them, before coming to UIKonf. I have no idea why. That's just dumb. But 3 weeks before the conference, I had 2 removed. And a week afterwards, I wanted to go to the dentist and like have the other 2 removed, as we planned in the initially. And when I got there, I couldn't even open my mouth. And he was like, yeah, we're not doing that today. You're probably better off doing it later on in a couple of months and stuff. And I was like, but I really want to do it before going. He was like, no, can't do it. Not a good idea. So remember this guy? So actually, there's another option. And the other option will be to say no. So when he asks you to finish it by Friday, you just say, I can't do it. Like, there's not enough time. And I will even go further and to say that that's actually the professional option. The same way as my dentist told me, like, there's no way I can do this. That will cause you so much pain. It will create so much difficulties for you in the future. The same way you should say, no, this is not a good idea. But you need to explain why as well. You cannot just say, no, that's it, I'm not doing it, and close your laptop and go home. You have to explain. You have to explain why. You have to teach the manager, if he doesn't understand why this is important, to teach them, like, this is going to cause you a lot of trouble in the future. Don't do it right now. So if the scope of the feature that you want to implement is too big, just say no. And if there's not enough time to implement it, you have to say no as well. But yeah, we really, really need this done by Friday because like business realities and market share and stuff. Yeah, so if it's really, really, really important to do it by Friday, then you really, really, really need to say no. Because if it's that important to do it by Friday, it means that probably part of the company is relying on that. And if you're going to implement something really, really bad, then it's the company going to be affected. So if you say immediately, okay, I don't have time to do this, we can change the scope immediately and see like if the client wants to change the scope. Or we can just maybe add more people to the project. And since we're sharing like some stuff, probably, hopefully, it's not going to be too hard to get more people in the project. So you have to say it immediately so they know that he can act on it. So in summary, to move faster in the company, in the projects, in your teams, you need to increase your productivity. And to increase your productivity means increasing your quality. So focus on the quality first, and the productivity will come along. But unfortunately, there are no silver bullets for this. It has to be a company effort. It has to be implemented in the project as well. You have to try to achieve quality in your teams. And you have to act as a professional developer. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francisco. So thank you so much, Francisco. Do you have some time for some questions, you think?
Sure, of course.
I think we've got time for one or two questions before our coffee break, and then Maxim has an announcement or two before we release you all. Actually, I think he said he had a question as well after the two announcements. You wouldn't expect that, would you? So who has a question for Francisco? Wow, I think you did a great job. Oh, TJ has a question.
Is it a requirement when you create a template, or when you have a new pattern template, is it a requirement to make an Xcode template, or?
No, it's not. So for us, it's really depending on who's creating the pattern. So like there are a lot of patterns that are more for teaching purposes than to actually implementing in every project. So it really depends on the developer who's actually doing the pull request, if he wants to implement the Xcode template. Because to actually add the Xcode template is a bit more of work, so it might be annoying, and we don't want people to just like stop doing it because they have to do more work. So it's really depending on who's implementing it. And you can also, like, if you want in the future, implement it afterwards. That's not a problem.
Oh, there's another one back there. Dun, dun, dun.
Hi, I'm curious about the part when you said the team comes first, then you adapt the projects to the team. So I'm wondering if you have very similar kind of projects so you can do that, or what if projects vary, or you have new technology and you just need to shuffle the teams, you know? Did you have that situation? Just comment on that,
Yeah, so, like, in general, for experiments, in general, we work with the same product people. So there are some similarities in most of the projects, but probably there are also like projects that are completely different. But in my experience, it's way easier to have like a team that is working together really well. And you have like some specific need for another project. So for example, you need like, let's say you're building like only client-side iOS app. And then you need somebody from backend to like build like a Go backend or something like that, right? It's way easier to plug that people into a team that is already working than just creating a new team for a new project that has different needs.
All
I
right.
think we're good.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you guys.
So before I release you all to Maxim, I want to know if anybody can tell me Gwen's favorite color. No, the exact hex digits. Don't look it up. It's on the floor. I know it. I can see it from here. I can read upside down. All right. Oh, there's a person. You won yourself a prize. Come find me and give me your mailing address. I will mail you a T-shirt. All right. And you didn't look it up. You promise. All right. All right. Maxim has some announcements and possibly even a question. And then it's coffee time.
Actually, we found an iPhone, and we already found the person who lost the iPhone, so enjoy your coffee.